Welcome on back, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. We're here for the Hawthorn Hawks 2024 review episode. We're going to have a look at everything that was Hawthorn 2024, the rise of Hokball. Where did it come from? What can we expect from it in the future? And how exciting was it to watch? Before we jump into all of that, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Let me know down in the comments below, what was your favourite part of Hokball 2024? Also, check out all the social medias. Plenty of content over there. Podcast on Spotify, YouTube twice a week. Go check it all out. Let's jump into Hawthorn 2024. So they finished 14 wins, 9 losses, finished 7th on the ladder. They won an elimination final against the Bulldogs, and then obviously finished their season with a loss to Port Adelaide in the semi-finals. Very good year from them from where they were. Especially when you consider they lost their first 5 games, only lost another 4 during the home and away season. So a fantastic effort from them this year. Let's go match by match. As you can see, lots of red at the top, lots of green from then on. Fantastic year. What have we got to start with? So they started a little bit slow. They played Essendon round 1. It wasn't a great performance from them. They probably outplayed Essendon in many ways that day. Just couldn't convert on the scoreboard and ended up losing by 24 points. Round 2 was Melbourne. They got smacked in that one. Not a great performance there. They played pretty well against Geelong in all honesty. They got smacked in the first and third quarters, but their second and fourth were pretty solid and showed some good signs. Against Collingwood, they looked down and out in the first half, but their second half was fantastic, and they nearly stole that victory. Only lost by 5 points before going up to the Gold Coast and losing by 53 points. After 5 rounds, it was looking bad, and then all of a sudden they play against the other team that hadn't won a game at this point, and in North Melbourne, and smacked them entirely. Beat them by 45 points, and it was like, okay, they're not terrible. They're not great, but they're not terrible. They followed it up with a really bad performance against Sydney. Sydney smacked them by 76 points at the MCG in what was not a great performance. But then from then on, it kind of turned around just slowly at first before end of season was just incredible. So they beat Bulldogs by 7 points at Marvel, which was a massive result. Very unexpected win for them. I think most people didn't expect it, didn't see it coming, but they got the win. Followed it up down in Launceston at Utah Stadium with a good win against St Kilda by 5 points. They then looked like they were going to beat Port Adelaide, being 5 goals up most of the game before a massive capitulation towards the end, and Port Adelaide stole it by a point. But then turned it back around straight away the next week, beat Brisbane by 25 at Marvel, Adelaide by 27 at the MCG, then went down to Utah Stadium again, and this time beat GWS by 6 after trailing by 3 goals at halftime. Beat Richmond by 48 points going into the bye, to all of a sudden be looking like they're a finals chance. They're, at this point, 7 wins, 7 losses, which is an incredible turnaround. And then the second half of the year, post-bye, didn't slow down. Beat West Coast by 61 points over in the West. They did get smacked by Geelong by 51 points at GMHBA, but that's okay. Write that one off, I think, because then they bounced back with 13-point win over Fremantle. Then they really hit their straps. 66-point win in the wet against Collingwood. Followed it up by a 66-point win on the road in Adelaide against Adelaide. 2-point loss to GWS at Manuka, which they were leading comfortably at points in this one and probably should have won. Then turned it on for a 74-point win over Carlton, 63-point win over Richmond, and then smacked North Melbourne down at Utah Stadium by 124 points in what was one of the more one-sided games you'll ever see in your life. And then, as we said, they made it to the finals, beat Bulldogs by 37 points in an elimination final before losing by 3 points to Port Adelaide at Adelaide Oval in a semi-final. Overall, very successful year, you'd have to say, from Hawthorn. From where they were, from where we kind of expected they would be this year, a fantastic output from them. I look at their last 3 years, as you can see, 2022, 8 wins, finished 13th on the ladder, dropped back to 7 wins and 16th on the ladder for 2023. And a lot of those 7 wins were late in the season, 2023. Showed a little bit of momentum heading into 2024, I guess, from that. 2024 came around, started poorly, but boy, oh boy, did they turn it on. As you can see, they only used 34 players this year, so much lower than the AFL average and what they had been using the previous couple years. So perhaps we'll get into players by players shortly, but they certainly didn't have disastrous injuries. They didn't have multiple injuries where they just kept having to change players like some teams did. But you kind of need that luck sometimes. As you can see, their experience certainly went up this year, as did their age. Are still not one of the older teams or the more experienced teams. You take out Gunston and Bruce, and those numbers would plummet. But yeah, they're certainly starting to get to that point now where you think they're going to just keep getting better and better based on what you can see, age and experience-wise. A look at some of the numbers, a lot of stats here. We won't go through them all. We'll just have a look at some of the key things. As you can see, massive difference in a point margin going 23 to 24, minus 18 last year to plus 14. It's a turnaround of over 5 goals, which obviously is a massive positive no matter which way you look at it. They kind of dominated disposals last year, which is a little bit surprising for how few wins they had, but they kind of were similar this year, slightly down, but still pretty good in that area. Inside 50 count really improved this year. Last year they couldn't do much with the ball, whereas this year plus 6.4, so that's like a change of 9 inside 50s in the positive sense from year to year. Their ability to get the ball out of the opposition 50 was a lot better this year. We'll get into scoring sources in a minute, but you'll see that a bit more evidently there. Metres gained is the biggest season-on-season change we had in the AFL by far this year. Basically a 530 metre difference, which when you consider the football field's roughly 150-ish metres, give or take, that's well over 3 football fields difference. Just year on year is a huge change. Turnover game was probably one of the biggest improvers. They went from certainly early in the season not being great in this area to turning it around to be one of, if not the best, intercept team, certainly in the second half of the year. Contested footy was really good. Uncontested footy, when they were winning those games late in the season, they were absolutely dominating uncontested football. Clearances dropped off a little bit, especially in the centre clearance game from last year, but still pretty solid. Their forward efficiency increased dramatically, while also their defensive efficiency increased, which is just it tends to happen that when one side of your game's going better, the other one also follows. Tackles, they were a low tackling team. That's not a massive issue. Low pressure team, but when they needed to, they turned it on, certainly second half of the year. Ruck work, Lloyd Meek was a good find for them this year, but you look at just the ruck numbers, I guess, year on year. They went from plus 9 hit-outs per game to losing hit-out count overall, which isn't a major concern, but when you look at their hit-outs to advantage, that also dropped quite a lot, with them getting 1.5 less than they did last year, as well as conceding an extra 2.5. So not major concerns there, but certainly just a difference in style of gameplay, I guess, from year on year, which they adapted to quite well. Here's their scoring sources over the last few years. As you can see, it's going to be an improvement pretty much across the board for them. Kick-ins got better offensively, got better defensively, so that's a really positive sign. Stoppages increased by 8 points offensively, dropped a couple extra points defensively, but overall a net gain of 6 points from stoppages, which is really quite good. Turnovers plus 7 offensively and minus 15 defensively. So that's a change in 22 points from turnovers. 4 goals, give or take, is a massive improvement. The 2023 numbers, let's not beat around the bush, were terrible. Certainly offensively, but even defensively weren't great. Whereas this year, offensively, 49 points per game from turnovers is really, really good. And 40.5 against is also one of the better teams in the AFL at that. Transition from the defence, this is another area of really good improvement, especially on the defensive end. Offensively, increased by a goal, but defensively increased by 2 goals. So that's really fantastic effort on defensive half transition play, offensively and defensively there. Forward half transition scoring source got better as well across the board, whereas from centre bounce, slight improvement offensively, but also slight unimprovement, whatever the opposite of improvement is, down defensively. So net 0 roughly from centre bounce. But some really, really impressive numbers there, especially from turnovers. And I think the defensive half transition scoring as well was a massive improvement and a key to their success this year. We'll jump into some of the players. So these are the key players, I guess, sort of players that would be looking at getting regular games, or not necessarily in their best 23, but there or thereabouts, that missed games this year. Jai Sarong, he missed 20, but he wasn't good enough for their best lineup on the most part, let's be honest. CJ, he missed 14. He was in and out of the team a bit, but missed 14. Harry Morrison missed 13. Will Day is probably the big one that missed a lot of games. 9 games missed from him was... he's obviously a very good midfielder. Kausha Deer, he missed 8, obviously first year player. You're not too surprised by that. Jack Gunston missed 7. Nick Watson missed 7, once again first year player. Luke Bruce missed 6 and Cam McKenzie missed 5. So they did have a lot of continuity. Jeez, I can't even speak. In their team this year, which allowed them to, I guess, have that confidence in each other. It really helps teams when you're not having to make constant changes week in, week out. The occasional change here or there, but not the drastic ones that some other teams around them had. So this is highest rated players by position for their season. Using AFL official ratings, champion data ratings, we know that they're not perfect. Not everyone agrees with them. I certainly don't agree with them all the time, but they just give a little base here for where the players were at last year to this year. So start off key defenders. James Sicily, technically key defender. He does play medium, tall defence, key defence. He also rotates forward at times. He's won a couple games off his boot this year just by swinging forward. As you can see, his rating did drop from last year, but I think that's more so due to the fact that he wasn't relied on as much. I think he had a lot more support around him, so that certainly benefited him. Josh Weddle was outstanding. As you can see, went from an 8.6 to an 11.2. Really good improvement from him. Jack Scrimshaw copped a bit of flack early season, but I think he showed really good development again on last year. Sam Frost, he's their third key defender, I think, in all honesty, and he had an okay season. He wasn't great. Only missed the one game though, so positive there. Key forwards, Charles, he came into the team. They needed key forwards, and they brought in both Gunston and Chell, obviously bringing Gunston back from Brisbane. And he, in all honesty, showed solid effort. He did what he needed to do as that key forward. Nothing world-beating, but solid enough. Slightly improved on what he did with Gold Coast last year. Their medium defenders, Blake Hardwick, obviously he rotated forward at certain times early season. I think his best role is in the back line, especially once you look at the medium forwards that Hawthorn have. He's certainly not needed up forward, I don't think. Solid season from him. Nothing better than last year, but much the same. Impey, he slightly improved on last year, but I mean, last year was a bit of a down year for him. Carl Amon, he was solid all year round without being world beater. Medium forwards, Dylan Moore. All-Australian this year, first time All-Australian. Slightly improved on last year's outing. I think his first probably 12 weeks were fantastic. He was, at that point, the best player in their team. I think Newcomb and maybe even Warple passed him in the second half of the year, but that first half of the year, he was keeping them in games when they were losing, and also those early wins, he was very crucial in a lot of them. So, a very good year from him. Connor McDonald, he was good, didn't miss a game, much the same numbers as last year. Nick Watson obviously comes into the team this year, first year. Was outstanding, could have been even better if he kicked straight early season, but what he was doing late season was fantastic. Jack Ginnivan, another one that came across to Hawthorn this year from Collingwood, obviously premiership player last year. He improved on last year's efforts. He won a bit more of the ball. He does a lot of good things. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about him every week. He's always very vocal and in the media, so there's always talk about him. But he does a lot of talking on the field, and overall, he does a very good job. Luke Bruce, starting sub way too many times this year, so kind of forget his player rating. He did what he needed to when he needed to, really came on as a sub many times and did perform pretty well at that. So a solid enough season from him. He's probably past the days of being that key medium-sized forward, and in all honesty, in this team, he doesn't need to be, because they've got Dylan Moore, they've got Connor McDonald, they've got Nick Watson, and they've got Jack Ginnivan, who are all that sort of player. It'll be interesting to see if maybe Ginnivan moves into the midfield a bit more next year, but we'll see how that goes. Going forward, midfielders, I think Jai Newcomb was their best player this year. He was probably their best player last year, in all honesty. I think his second half of the year was improved on anything he showed last year. Had a little bit of a slow start this year, but once the team got going, he certainly got going, and that led to a really good year from him. James Warple was very solid, slightly down on last year's numbers, but still pretty good. He's a very impact player that you can't take your eyes off, especially in the forward line. Massimo D'Ambrosio came across from Essendon, and this was their biggest get, without a doubt, for the team. He was outstanding, running up and down that wing. Couldn't get a game last year for Essendon, couldn't really find a role for him, and Hawthorn were like, we'll take him, chucked him on a wing, and he just was outstanding. He was certainly in the top 3 wingmen, maybe top 4 wingmen this year in the AFL. Obviously, Errol Goulden was clear number 1, no doubt about it. I've got Blake Acres, Massimo D'Ambrosio, and probably Josh Dacos, all very similar numbers for the year. I think just due to the fact that Hawthorn were the best of those 3 teams, maybe he gets the nod as number 2, but I could make an argument for all 3 of them. Will Day, he missed a bit of football, probably slightly down on last year, but still solid enough. I think he would have been handy if he had have got a few extra games in him, especially late in the year. Connor Nash was solid, maybe slightly down on last year, but once again, probably that's due to the improvement of so many players around him. Harry Morrison, he played 12 games, was solid. Cam McKenzie only missed the 5 games, was really good. As I mentioned, CJ missed quite a bit of footy, similar numbers to last year. I don't know if he's at the point at the moment where he is in their best lineup. I think he's probably at the moment a depth player, but a little bit of improvement, and he could be back into that best lineup, no doubt about it. Lloyd Meek was a huge improver. If not their most improved player, very close to. He played about half the year last year, I think, and put in some solid numbers without being a world beater, but this year he was outstanding from about round 6 or so when he came in, he dominated. He's not probably in the top 6 ruckman in the league. He might not even be in the top 7 or 8, but he's certainly in the top 10, which doesn't sound outstanding, but going into this year, you probably didn't have him in the top 15 ruckman, in all honesty. You might not have even had him in the top 20, so it's a great end of season from him, in all honesty. Ned Reeves was really good when he came in. He only played the 4 games. He wasn't used much. He probably won't be used much going forward, but he did his job when he was needed. But he's just probably going to be that depth player as a backup for Lloyd Meek. A look at some of the players that left the club. Obviously, this list doesn't look that bad when you consider what they bought in. But they lost Tyler Brockman in a trade to West Coast, who didn't really do much over in the West for West Coast, in all honesty, this year. Jacob Koskitsky went to Richmond. His numbers also dropped. Max Lynch retired after only playing the 1 game last year and not doing much with it. Brandon Ryan went to Brisbane. He's only played the 1 game this year, and his numbers don't suggest that he's a world beater. So 4 players that probably Hawthorn aren't too disappointed about losing. And then when you look at it, the players that they bought in this year, obviously Chol from Gold Coast, Jack Gunston came back from Brisbane, then obviously a couple draftees in Nick Watson and Kalshir Deer came in as well as first year players, and then you're chucking Ginnivan from Collingwood. It's and of course Massimo D'Ambrosio, who was probably the biggest improver in the AFL, maybe. So fantastic recruiting last year. They went after what they needed and they got it, and they were rewarded for it. I think it kind of went a little under the radar how much they recruited last year. And in all honesty, it looks like they're going to recruit really well again this year. There's a lot of players that want to go to Hawthorn at the moment, and you can understand why. They have fun playing football and they look good doing it. So, wouldn't be surprised to see some big names heading towards Hawthorn for season 2025. What do we make of their year? Obviously a massive success in the grand scheme of things, from where they were last year and where they were after 5 rounds. A massive success of a year. If you want to delve deep into it, it's probably a little bit of a disappointment and a wasted opportunity for them to make a semi-final against a Port Adelaide who had just been smacked the week before. It was a really good opportunity for them to make a prelim, and then if they hadn't made a prelim, who knows what would have happened in a game up in Sydney against Sydney. But it just feels like it might have been a wasted opportunity for them. In all honesty, they might get another chance. They probably should next year based on what we saw this year. But you've also got to consider the fact that the competition is so tight. You look at teams down to 12th, 13th, 14th on the ladder this year. They weren't far off making finals. Like, it's only a game or two in between finals and not finals, down to like that 12th spot, 13th spot, 14th spot even. So some of those teams looked lock-ins for finals halfway through the year. So you got to consider that it's not going to take much for teams to catch up, and it's not going to take much bad luck for you to fall away. A few injuries could really deplete a team, any team, and Hawthorn's probably in that bunch. So that's why I consider this year a little bit of a wasted season, wasted opportunity. I won't say wasted season because they certainly improved. They showed a lot of good signs, but you've got to, just when you get that opportunity, you really have to take it. Goes for every team. You make it into finals, you got to take the opportunity. With how tight the competition is, I'll be saying that for the last 4 teams in the competition as well. If you don't win the premiership from the top 4 this year, it's definitely a wasted opportunity because every team has a chance. And I mean, there's no real standouts. You look, Sydney were a standout at one point, but they're certainly not anymore, based on what we saw in the second half of the year. So, a little bit of a wasted opportunity, but I think we can safely say Hokball is a thing. It was entertaining to watch. They had fun doing it. We would imagine, in all honesty, that they're probably going to be a finals contender next year. If they show any improvement, they're going to be top 4 next year. I don't. It's too early to make big calls and stuff, but I'd say I'm probably going to have them 5th on the ladder. That's where I'm going to put them for now. In all honesty, they probably are a top 4 team next year if they do improve. I think, like, in depth and skill and all of that, they're not even in the top 10 teams, I don't think, but they play a good brand of football. Sam Mitchell has them going along, and if they have a run like this year, finals will beckon, you'd imagine, for them again next year. So that's my Hawthorn Hawks 2024 review. Hokball 2024. Who saw it coming? Not many, I don't think. Jump down in the comments below. Let me know where you see them finishing next year. Will Hokball go to the next level? Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of the content that comes out at All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. We have so much every day at the moment. So join in the fun. Thanks for watching. Catch us on the next one.